consider Secretary Simon not just a former colleague, current colleague, and a friend. He currently serves as Secretary of State of the state of Minnesota, who is always at the top of the competition when it comes to voter participation. Less recent election cycles have changed that fact. Mr. Simon will correct me if I'm wrong, but he also serves as president of the National Association of Secretaries of State. So clearly, all of our witnesses bring not just unique perspectives, but a very substantive experience and expertise to this conversation. Before I turn it over to our witnesses for their testimony, I want to quickly acknowledge two written testimonies that were shared prior to this convening. One is from the League of United Latin American Citizens, which will expand upon Mr. Perano's remarks here today. The other is from the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, which is a coalition of over 240 national organizations that discusses the barriers to voting created by the SAVE Act. The testimony is available on the Leadership Conference's website, and we'll accept these for the record at today's Spotlight hearing. And with that, Secretary Simon.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank you, Ranking Member Padilla, and members of the Rules Committee for convening this meeting. I am Steve Simon, Minnesota Secretary of State. Just to clarify, I'm here on my own accord, speaking only for myself and my office in the state of Minnesota, not for any national organization. As the chief election official for the state, I like to say I'm in the democracy business, and it is a very interesting time to be in the democracy business. Minnesotans take great pride in our elections, and I never miss a chance to say that we are most often #1 in the nation in voter turnout. We believe that Minnesota has struck the right balance between accessibility and security. As for accessibility, voter registration is one of many examples. Eligible voters in Minnesota can register to vote online, by mail, in person at their local election office, or in person at their polling place on Election Day. As for security, we have extensive measures in place before, during, and after Election Day. Our digital statewide voter registration system is updated daily and cross-checked with data on voters that we receive from other states, from the federal government, and from other government offices in Minnesota. Local election officials in Minnesota use this system to verify that voters are who they say they are, live where they say they live, and have only voted once. So I want to be very clear today, Senator. We are confident in our election administration in Minnesota. But recently, the U.S. House passed H.R. 22, known as the SAVE Act, that would pose one of the greatest risks to the freedom to vote in our lifetimes. Now, I've been speaking out on this topic for some time, and I am not alone. My colleagues from across the country have also been sounding the alarm about the SAVE Act. The legislation would, if enacted, keep millions of eligible Americans from the polls. It would cost states, counties, and cities in Minnesota, at least, untold millions of dollars to implement, and it would impose the risk of criminal prosecution for local election workers left trying to sort out how these new federal requirements impact their responsibilities. It would fundamentally change election administration in this country overnight, literally overnight, because it's effective as of the date of enactment. The stated purpose of the legislation is election security. And we all agree that election security is vital. And we all agree, of course, that only those who are eligible to vote should cast ballots. But the SAVE Act is based on the totally false assumption that huge numbers of non-citizens are somehow voting in this country. There is no evidence of that. In fact, the research shows the opposite is true. In Minnesota, we have fresh numbers to prove that our elections are secure. Just last year, in the summer of 2024, a professor at the University of St. Thomas Law School in Minneapolis published an analysis on this very subject. He looked at 10 years of Minnesota voting from 2015 to 2024, during which 13.4 million ballots were cast. He found 3 examples, 3 out of 13.4 million, 3 examples of non-citizens voting over 10 years, all of whom, by the way, were green card holders. Not a single one of the 3 was someone who was undocumented or not supposed to be in this country. On the other hand, there is compelling evidence that laws requiring people to provide citizenship documentation to register to vote has kept many eligible voters from casting a ballot. Look at Kansas. In Kansas in 2011, lawmakers imposed a similar proof of citizenship requirement. Federal courts ultimately struck down the law, but not before 31,000 eligible U.S. citizens were denied the freedom to vote in the state of Kansas. So for this reason alone, the SAVE Act should never become law. But of course, the SAVE Act isn't our only concern. On March 25th, the president issued an executive order on elections through which he attempted to bypass Congress and enact part of the SAVE Act all on his own. The executive order purports to direct an independent agency, the EAC, to change the National Mail Voter Registration Form to require documentary proof of citizenship. Elsewhere, the executive order threatens to withhold funds to states unless they comply with certain demands, including potentially turning over private voter data. Now, as you know, that executive order is now tied up in the courts. Minnesota has joined 18 other states in arguing that the president simply lacks the legal authority to do what he's trying to do. A court has already issued an injunction covering a major part of that executive order. Now, this all comes at a time when states are working to cover more costs and more responsibilities as the federal government shows some signs of backing away from some election security commitments. You're no doubt aware of our long-standing relationship with CISA, part of the Department of Homeland Security. Earlier this year, the administration put many of our partners at CISA on administrative leave while calling into question access to critical election security services. We need that security partnership with CISA and with others now more than ever, as our election system faces continued security threats. And sadly, election administrators also face continued threats. Last fall, my office was one of several around the country that had to be evacuated in late September after receiving a package containing white powder from something or someone billing itself as the U.S. Traitor Elimination Army. Thankfully, no one in our office was physically harmed. But now is not the time to back away from supporting election officials or pass laws that will introduce new chaos, new confusion, and new vectors of exclusion from our election system. So it's a challenging time to be in the democracy business. Our democracy is being tested. It has been before, and it has held. It has held. But continuity and success are not inevitable. They come from hard work and commitment, and that is why I am here today. I want to thank you all for your time and for your attention.